It is Monday, December 16th, 2024. This is another edition of Football Today. It is presented to you by Captain Morgan, the official spiced rum of the NFL. You know my good friends, Bobby Skinner, Justin Penik. I am Chris Rose. Producer Connor's hanging out with us with yet another week. And guys, we are almost wrapping up week 15 around the NFL. And let's get it started with what could have been the game of the year. Top two offenses in the NFL going at it. It is time for our La Vida Más Fina game of the week, brought to you by Corona. And the Bills, they score 40 plus for the second straight week. But unlike last week out in LA, they actually end up on the top end here. 48-42 winners over the Detroit Lions. They hand the Lions their first loss since week 2, and they lost more than just a game because Aleem McNeil is done perhaps for the year. Carlton Davis, one of their cornerbacks, is done perhaps for the year as well, as the injuries continue to mount on the defensive side of the football. So Bobby Skinner, they now have the same exact record as the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC. It was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago we were asking the question, do you take the Detroit Lions or the field in the NFC? Scale of 1 to 10. How worried are you about the mighty Lion with 3 weeks to go in the season?
Scale of 1 to 10, maybe like a 3. I'm really not worried about them much at all. Now, they have Super Bowl or bust aspirations, and I think if there's a reason why they won't win a Super Bowl, it will be these injuries on defense. Aleem McNeil, Carlton Davis, to go with Aiden Hutchinson. But at the same time, they were up 24-7 at the half, and a Josh Reynolds drop away from the Super Bowl with a worse secondary last year. Now they had Aiden Hutchinson for that run, but like they were there. This offense is going like this is where if they were in the AFC, I'd be a little more worried because you got to face a lot better quarterbacks, teams that can go in shootouts with you. I just don't see the team in the NFC that I'm picking to outscore the Lions on a playoff Sunday. I just don't see it. I think on offensively, they are a powerhouse. And I know the Bills, did what they did in this game on offense, but I think they're just a powerhouse. And I don't see anybody in the NFC that's going to stop that.
Yeah, Bobby brings up a good point about you got to be able to outscore the Lions. The injuries on defense are very, very concerning. And even Russell Brown put out a tweet comparing the week 1 depth chart of the Lions and then crossed out all of the names that that are hurt for them, that are not on not contributing right now. And it's concerning, man, and especially at the linebacker spot. I mean, they had Jack Campbell and Ben Neiman from week 1 that was active for them yesterday. So they really had no linebackers, where that used to be like a position of strength for them. And then I think you saw the Buffalo Bills really target like Johnson and the running back in the pass game to maybe even take advantage of the middle of the field and take advantage of those linebackers. So you got to outscore this Detroit offense, though. Bottom line, they also need to generate some sort of pass rush in the playoffs, too. You're going to have Aiden Hutchinson out. You have some of these other pass rushers that are out for you. Obviously, Zadarius Smith is performing really well for them, but this is a defense that's going to want to blitz heavy. They're going to want to play man coverage on the back end, so you're going to need that pass rush to get home. Who's going to get home for you consistently, especially with all these injuries? And now that you're starting to lose some secondary guys on linebackers and coverage, you got to be able to cover in the back end if you're going to be aggressive. And Aaron Glenn, we know that no matter what, he's going to want to be aggressive. So I'm higher than like a 3.5. Like I'm closer to like a 6 because these injuries are bad, man. There's like 16 guys that are out for them on defense.
Yeah, it's actually 13 guys that are on IR, and you could be adding a couple more, if not 2 or 3 more names to that list in the early part of this week. They lead the NFL in terms of defensive participation on injured reserve, which is a category you tend to not want to lead in the league. So, of course, they can outscore every team, but Philadelphia has won 10 in a row. We saw Green Bay come into their place and drop 34 on them. Minnesota, we know, can put up some numbers. Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers went in there in week 2 and took care of business. And their offense just put 40 on the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL in the Chargers. So there are a lot more teams, I think, that are a viable threat to knock down Detroit, even in their own building, even if they're the number 1 seed, even if they're coming off of a bye, than 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I would put that number at least a 6. I might even lean toward a 7. in part because of the whole hocus pocus thing. Guys, they are one of four NFL teams that have never made the Super Bowl. And I know that there's probably most of the players on the team that didn't know that. I think probably the coaching staff that has been around football for a lot longer than the players have probably know it, but are downplaying it and won't ever bring it up and won't even second guess it and won't even think about all that stuff. But that shit is real, man. When you, as a collective fan base, know that you haven't accomplished something, that's all you can think about. Take my word from it. I am from Cleveland, Ohio. We are one of the other four teams that have never made it. And we are in the same rowboat as the Detroit fan base because we're not an expansion team, unlike the Jacksonville Jaguars, unlike the Houston Texans. We have been around ever since they started football, basically, and haven't made it. So you damn well better believe that if somebody scores earlier, takes a 10-0 lead in a divisional round matchup in Detroit, that Bobby, somebody's going to be feeling that angst.
So you said you're like a 6.5, Justin at 6. So does that mean if you do Lions or the field, you guys are taking the field now?
That's a great question, and I think that I would say yes. Listen, I predicted Green Bay at the beginning of the year. I had them not winning the division, but I believe I had them not winning the division and then winning it as a wild card team. I don't know if I can compare this to Rodgers' 2010 team that ended up making it all the way to the Super Bowl. Was it 2010 or 2009? Whatever year, Super Bowl 45.
Team that beat the Bears in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, where they won 3 straight road games. And that's what this Green Bay team is going to do. They're going to end up being most likely the 6th seed, kind of where they are right now. And I could see them going in and winning 3 straight road games.
I'm still picking the line. Like the concern is there with the defense, and when you get into just a scoring fest, like if the Lions somehow play the Bucks, which I could see that happening, and I could see that reunion, that rematch kind of happening. That's a dangerous game. When you get in a scoring match and you get in a back and forth matchup, it takes something fluky. It takes a fumble, it takes a tip pass. It may even take like a penalty, a missed kick, something fluky that could happen. Versus a couple weeks ago, we're just talking about how the Lions are just kicking ass. And I think the main difference between the Lions this year, even without Aiden Hutchinson, the Lions this year compared to previous years is that, well, their defense has been one of the best in the league. And now if you kind of take that away and we're back into, all right, Ben Johnson, Jared Goff, really good offense, really good offensive line, that's just pacing teams, and that's how we're going to win, and we're just relying on that, it's dangerous. It's dangerous, and how sustainable is that is the question, especially when you're talking about in football. It's one 60-minute game that decides your season in a postseason and not a best of 3, 5, or 7.
I agree it's dangerous as well too, but I think they'll probably still end up with the number 1 seed. And I go back to I think they're like quite better on offense this year than they were last year. Yes. And you don't have that 49ers team in the NFC. Like you don't have the team that is just loaded with talent. I guess the Eagles are there, but I still think we all have some questions with them, even though they did an awesome job yesterday with their passing game. And I also think, the Lions are a type of team where it's like their defense is what their defense is, and they play that way, and that I think helps you in the playoffs. So I just have more trust in them this year. Like you said, yeah, it's hard, right? But I think if they have the home field advantage, the bye week, then it's beat 2 teams that you should beat. Where beating 3 teams that you should beat makes it a little more difficult. But I trust that offense to win a shootout against any team in the NFC. And I expect that defense to not give up 40 points or 35 points in the playoffs either.
Okay, we'll say this. Detroit schedule, last 3 games at Chicago, at San Francisco on a Monday night, home against the Vikings. Whereas for Philadelphia, at the Commanders, home against the Cowboys, home against your G-men. So edge schedule-wise to Philadelphia. As of right now, they have to outright win it. But, if we get to eventually a tiebreaker somewhere down the road in Week 18, who knows what that could end up looking like for either one of these teams. It's going to be very, very interesting. one last thing. Let's say 30 seconds on this one, guys. Whose game management do you trust more right now, Dan Campbell or Nick Sirianni? Because we did have one coach that did an onside kick in a 10-point game with 12 minutes to go. Bobby?
I'm glad we didn't like start off with that because it's like there was 80 points scored in this game, and I don't want to talk about one decision that really didn't affect. But I don't think Dan Campbell said afterwards, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. Like, surprise onside kick, sure, but now that you can't do surprise onside kicks, that's dumb, right? This is not the same as the fourth down stuff where but you have like a 1 in 20 chance of recovering that. I saw a couple analytics people trying to be like, well, they're just trying to take a chance. No, that is dumb, and I think Dan Campbell admitted it afterwards.
By the way, I think that you should have it. It should be like a coach's challenge. You should have one surprise onside kick allowed in your bag where you don't have to announce it to the world.
Well, we shouldn't have any type of having to announce it to the world, but that's the NFL we're in today.
Yeah, I mean, I trust Dan Campbell a little bit more. I mean, the Bills had gotten into scoring position on every drive except one. So Dan Campbell makes decisions, and this is why I respect Dan Campbell, even when he's aggressive and maybe sometimes too aggressive. He makes decisions not to keep his team in it, not to keep it close, not to keep it tight. He makes decisions of, you know what, we're going to win a football game. Even if that means we're going to lose by 21 and it looks a little worse at the end, he made a decision that would have been the difference between the Lions possibly winning, or it makes the loss look even worse on the scoreboard. So
yeah, but there's a lot higher chance of an NFL team making 2 stops and the number 1 offense in the NFL scoring 10 points than getting a 1 in 20 onside kick.
That is it. That is it. Well, that, of course, was the game of the week brought to you by Corona. And you know what? We always try and be a fan that never loses. And here's what we mean. Our team, they don't always win every single day. In fact, as Giants and Browns fans, they rarely win. So even when we lose, we still love the game. Because whether it's a big-time deep ball or a conversion of third or fourth and short or a great tailgate out in the parking lot like Penik experienced on Sunday out at MetLife, there's always something to cheer for. And the best beer to pair with those awesome moments, Corona. Corona is all about finding the maximum amount of joy within every moment of the game. Win or lose, at home or on the road, it's the perfect beer to go along with watching football and all the moments that come along with it. So cheers to everybody who loves the game beyond the scoreboard. Corona, for the fan who never loses. Get yours at ordercorona.com for 21 and over. Relax responsibly. Corona Extra Beer. It is imported by Crown Imports in Chicago, Illinois.
The last time the Giants won a game was at our Corona watch party, week 5. Me and Justin were together. We're happy over the Seahawks win, and now we've lost 9 straight. So shout out Corona.
Yes, but even when you do that, you've got a silver lining because you can celebrate and drink a Corona while you're watching the Giants make the first pick in the draft. Keep that in your back pocket.
Celebrate or panic, but I will be drinking Corona no matter what.
All right. As we mentioned, the Bills win on the road in Motown. The Chiefs win in Cleveland. 21-7 is the final. So they're 13-1. They have a 2-game lead over the Bills. The big news for the Chiefs, who were jump-starting a schedule which will see them play 3 games in the next 11 days, is that Patrick Mahomes has got some sort of ankle sprain. They're going to know a little bit more later on Monday, they do believe. Do you think you rest him for Saturday's game against the Houston Texans? Because they go home against Houston, then they're at Pittsburgh on Christmas Day, which is in the middle of the week. That's a Wednesday, by the way. And then they're at Denver to finish this thing up. Bobby, what do you do?
Rose, how did you not become one of the 70 people on the Netflix broadcast? I was surprised when I was looking through the list.
That shows you where they think of me on the depth chart.
Well, I know you were on the hot dog contest, so I figured you'd be on there. Don't worry, it's like how much airtime does each person get? Like 35 seconds. But regardless, what was I gonna say? I don't know what to believe though with this Patrick Mahomes ankle sprain. Like Rappaport said that it's a high ankle. They believe it's a high ankle sprain, which is a serious injury. And like, yeah, you definitely sit him. But then it's like, oh, it's kind of like the injury he dealt with in the playoffs a couple years ago, where it's like, how bad is this ankle injury? And he didn't miss any time, and they won a Super Bowl. So if it's an ankle sprain that bothers you, but it's not going to get worse, yeah, play through it. If it's an actual high ankle sprain, then yeah, he should sit. So I don't know what to believe with this, but I also, if it's an actual real injury that can get worse, rest it. I don't think, I think a 2-game advantage or kind of 1.5 game advantage on the Bills because of the tiebreaker is enough reason to force him to play through an injury that could hurt them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with that. You have the game lead. I would just sit him. I mean, Mahomes has proven that he can go on the road. That was the big storyline last year. Oh, first time Mahomes isn't playing home in the playoffs, and lo and behold, look at what he did. So, I don't know how bad the injury is. This is a short week. I mean, what could be nice is then you have the breath of fresh air after having like somewhat of a really short week going from Saturday to Wednesday, and then you have Mahomes for the Steelers. 2 road games to finish off the season, Steelers and Broncos. But I mean, I'm not stressing this if I'm the Chiefs. I'm not pushing it. I know Mahomes is going to want to push it, but sit him for at least 1 week. Or if you have doctors be like, hey, well, sitting for 1 week isn't really going to do anything if you're just going to continue to play on this, then I guess you just play. And we've seen Mahomes limp through postseason and Super Bowl runs in the past before too. So
I think that this is the week you end up sitting him right here. It's your
agree.
last home game. Houston, even though they just became division champs on Sunday, not playing very well, in my opinion. I think that, all right, I'm going to try this without laughing. I think that the Chiefs can win with Carson Wentz against the Houston Texans.
I agree, Rose.
Because I do think that Kansas City defense, I mean, they forced 6 turnovers against, Jameis Winston and DTR and a befuddled Cleveland Browns franchise on Sunday, but still they can do just about anything they want. It's not like the Chiefs put up 30 on Sunday. They put up 21 and the Browns gift wrapped the first 7 points of the game on a muffed fumble. So yeah, I think you take this Saturday off. I think we'll see how you're doing that Wednesday at Pittsburgh, and if you're not doing great, you pray that you win that one, because the Bills' schedule, by the way, is cake. They've got 2 Patriots game with a Jets game sandwiched in between. So I'm thinking they're going to go 3-0 as long as Josh Allen and all those important players play in all those games. So that means that the Chiefs have got to win 2 out of 3 in order to get that number 1 seed and that much needed bye. Do you think that there's any way that the Chiefs lose 2 of 3 with a gimpy Mahomes, Bobby?
No. I just, again, they're facing 3 playoff teams with the Texans, Steelers, and Broncos, and some good defenses in there too. But I think they've shown a way to win, and I don't see them dropping 2 out of 3 when it matters, when it really matters. Now, if Carson Wentz is playing, then yeah, absolutely. Like if Carson Wentz is their quarterback for the next 2 weeks, I don't think I'm picking them in either of those 2 games. But that's why I said, where if it's not an injury that's going to get a lot worse by playing, I'm playing Patrick Mahomes, because I value getting that 1 seed. But I'm not going to, if it's something that can get worse, I'm not playing him.
Right.
Penik, who do you think gets that 1 seed once it's all said and done?
I think the Chiefs get it. They find a way to win 2. Right?
I think the Chiefs get it too, and I also think the Bills have had some weird losses to divisional foes, named the Patriots and Jets, over the last few years, despite being the superior team. That I don't think it's off the board that the Bills lose 1 game after having these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, Bills are literally setting the world on fire. So, like Josh Allen, it's actually kind of crazy. Stats that exist but don't matter. Since he's proposed to Haley Steinfeld over the last 3 weeks, hasn't taken a single sack. He's thrown for 1 million. He has 1 million touchdowns, has 1 million yards, and everything like that. Can very much see, not necessarily a bad Allen game, but just like, all right, well, what's going to happen when the Bills and Josh Allen isn't playing out of his freaking mind? Like, what happens in a game? It's going to happen eventually. He's not going to set the world on fire and have 50, 60 fantasy points every single game. Thank you, Josh Allen. For being on my fantasy teams. But yeah, so that's eventually going to happen. So what's going to happen with the Bills?
Did he wrap up MVP on a day where Lamar Jackson had 5 touchdown passes and 4 incompletions?
We need to stop. It's disrespectful to Lamar Jackson to just wrap this up and give it to Josh Allen right now.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Nobody watched that game. Everybody watched the Bills-Lions game.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
they are going to watch the next two Ravens games because you got a Saturday game against Pittsburgh, which we'll talk about momentarily. Then you've got the Christmas Day game against Houston. So you're going to see the next two, and who knows where they're going to put that Cleveland-Baltimore game in Week 18, depending on what it means. So
This is one of the more exciting playoff races because if Saquon breaks the rushing record, people like, last year, me and you talked about a lot, Rose, with Tyreek Hill, a wide receiver will just never win it. A running back can win it. A running back can win it every 8 to 10 years or so. And so if you have Lamar, Allen, and Saquon, I feel like this is one of maybe the most exciting playoff or MVP, one since the AP Peyton Manning one, or since the one that Peyton Manning and Steve McNair co-won.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, although Saquon took a little bit of a step back.
yeah, 65 yards yesterday.
65 yards, second lowest rushing total this season. All right, we still got a little bit more to chop up, but first, Penik, take it away.
I'll give you a fun fact, too, because I don't know if we're going to fit this in, but half the field is set, and for the first time in NFL history, half the playoff field is set with 3 weeks left to play in the regular season. So it's actually kind of crazy that the MVP race and how that's going to finish up is kind of more enticing than, like, the playoff race. Like, the teams are set. The seeding, obviously, is up in the air like we just talked about, but it's crazy how first time in NFL history that, like, half the field is set with 3 weeks to go.
Well, even in the AFC, the 7 seed is up 2 games on the 8 on the 8 seed. In the NFC,
Dumb Colts.
the NFC, there's things that can change, but I don't think it's things that can change that we're super excited about.
Stupid Colts. You can thank them for that. Today's episode is sponsored by DraftKings. High five for DraftKings. Just grab your favorite team's jersey and some snacks and head to the couch for another Sunday of action-packed football and get even closer to the action each Sunday with our partners at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you use our code Football Today. Stay in the action and use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot and an even bigger payout. And if sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't you worry. You could still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have a shot to win cash prizes. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use our promo code Football Today. That's all one word. Bet $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's promo code Football Today only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. You be glad you did.
All right, we continue on. The Steelers, they lose to the Philadelphia Eagles yet again. They've dropped 11 straight in the city of brotherly love and haven't won there since 1965. 30-13 is the final in that one. In the meantime, the Ravens, you mentioned it. Lamar Jackson, 5 touchdown passes to somehow squeak past the Giants 35-13. 14. Sorry, I didn't want to deny you that
some
extra
respect
point.
on our name, okay? We're 32nd in scoring, but we have 14.9 points for you, not 14.8.
That's my fault. And that 13 would have dragged you down massively. So I'm sorry about that. One, both, or neither, because the Steelers and Ravens will play in Baltimore on Saturday. One, both, or neither, Penik, are real Super Bowl contenders.
The Ravens are. Steelers just don't have like a staple win. And correct me if I'm wrong, looking at their schedule, right? They don't have that staple win against that really good team this year, right? They don't.
They beat the Broncos and Chargers, but here's the issue.
Beat the Chargers when Herbert was
when
hurt.
they are playing a good defense, they need their defense to have a great performance. That's the reality for the Steelers. Like, I think Russell Wilson is significantly better than Justin Fields. He gives them a much higher ceiling. When they're playing bad teams, they can drop 30 on your head. When they're playing a good defense, and this isn't even just a rust, they just don't have answers. Like, I don't love that running game.
I'm wrong, by the way. They beat the Ravens. I apologize.
Oh, yeah, they beat the Ravens, Justin. So, listen, the Steelers, can they make a run to the AFC Championship? I actually think they can. Because I think they can beat, I think they are capable of beating good teams. The issue is they need a great defensive performance whenever they're playing a good defense. They need to hold the Ravens to, what was it, 15 points or whatever?
Yeah, 16.
They won that game 18-16 with some Ravens missed field goals. So they need their defense to play great and the other offense to make some mistakes as well, miss a kick here or there.
And also, Rose, before you go, Russell Wilson had one pass play of 31 yards to Calvin Austin in the third quarter. Besides that, their longest play of the game was 17 yards.
And that was a flea flicker too, I believe.
They need They need George Pickens back. I mean, Russell Wilson has one of the best EPA per dropback on deep balls this year. So he's been one of the most efficient quarterbacks throwing the ball deep. And I compiled all of them on Friday because I was bored. And I'm like, this is just George Pickens making great play, great catch. And Russell Wilson's been throwing the ball really well too. But George Pickens is just the heartbeat of that passing offense and anything explosive on that offense.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell what Pittsburgh looks like with and without George Pickens. And I know he's a knucklehead, but man, he is a great player and he changed the entire dynamic. I think they went into the last 2 weeks, when he suffered that injury in practice late in the week before the Cleveland game and said, all right, we can beat the Cleveland Browns at home. Philadelphia, even with him in the lineup, might be a tough one the way that they're playing. But let's just make sure he is ready for that Saturday game against the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, I think they're doing everything they can. They're praying to the hamstring gods, if there is such a thing, that he will be ready. Now, I believe I went through this with my NFL researcher, Tony, that even if the Ravens win, the Steelers will still be leading the division because you eventually, I think, go down to the tiebreaker of common games, and we think that the Steelers will have a half game or a game lead over the Ravens in terms of common games. I think that's the tiebreaker that would show up as of right now if they're tied this late in the season. But still, a lot of weird, wacky things can happen with a couple weeks to go. Heck, it could come down to that Week 18 game where the Bengals come to Pittsburgh and the Browns go to Baltimore because, I mean, who knows what's going to happen. But to get back to the question, I definitely think the Ravens are a Super Bowl contender. Their defense has started to look a little sharper, and that's the big question with them. And the Steelers, I just don't see them winning 3 games in a row with that offense. Do you, Bobby?
No, I know my thing for them all year has been like I can see this being a team that wins 2 games, gets to the conference championship, and loses. And we look back at 4 years like, oh yeah, remember the Steelers with Russell Wilson went to the conference championship that year, like being one of those types of. I just don't trust their offense to win 3 games in a row when they're going to have to play good defenses. That defense, I think, can compete with anybody, but I don't trust that offense to win 3 games against good defenses.
And later on in the week, we've got a couple of big-time Saturday games. We will certainly be previewing the Steelers and the Ravens. And keep in mind, just keep in your back pocket, that Lamar Jackson 1-4 as a starter all-time against the Pittsburgh Steelers with just 5 touchdowns and 11 giveaways in that span. Anything else you want to mention about Week 15 before we get out of here, boys?
Look out for my Tampa Bay Bucks, baby.
Good job on the Eagles in their passing game. They, I thought that was a good step for them. And
Devontae Smith is good.
It's a reminder that even though there has been questions about the Eagles' passing game, that if they click, they still have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith to go with that running game, and Jalen Hurts has done it before. So is there questions about them? Sure, but when they click, they're as talented as everybody, and that defense is playing really, really well right now.
I will just give a shout out to the Washington Commanders, who locked up their first winning season since 2016. Did you guys know that they actually had made the playoffs more recently than they had a winning record? They made the playoffs.
We live streamed that game, Rose. Our sadness was live streamed as the Eagles benched Jalen Hurts for Nate Sudfeld, and our 6-10 Giants didn't win the division that year if the Eagles would have won.
Oh yeah, you had to watch the 7-9 Washington football team walk away with the division crown.
We wanted to win that so bad. We wanted the playoffs so bad. We would have beat the Bucks too. By the way,
we would have beat the Bucks. I was very convinced that we were going to beat
the
Tom
Giants
Brady.
versus Tom Brady in the playoffs. They lost to 2 points with Daniel Jones playing bad on Monday Night Football that year. That was a guaranteed Giants victory, and we didn't get to see it.
Oh, you little cute little Giants fans. You are so optimistic. Hey, you could end up getting a first, which would be the number 1 overall pick. It's always something to root for around here. Shout out to our producer extraordinaire, the one and only Connor, who's been doing an amazing job producing this show over the last several weeks for Justin Penik and Bobby Skinner. I am Chris Rose. We will see you later this week, Friday, on Football Today, presented to you by Captain Morgan, the official spiced rum of the NFL.